Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. Welcome to another edition of the Spin Zone. I'm your host, Spin Doc, here with you on behalf of the Daily Bread Network, and we are live on this Monday, August 4th. So, if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the Daily Bread Network on YouTube to get all of our content. Both Sosa and I have a whole bunch of NFL shorts that are custom made for every division, every team. We got a short on every team. You saw those over the weekend. If you want that and a whole lot more, you got free content at the Daily Bread Network. If you like what you hear, please also do follow me at Spin Doc Sports on X. Like the video, share it. We do appreciate the love. All right, so we got a new week and we got new money. But first, let's talk about how the weekend went and what did we learn. So VIP, a little bit of a bumpier ride over the weekend, but we're still solidly in the green at 57 almost percent win percentage and up 31.18 units. So as always, if you want to get in, the link is in my bio. Please send me a DM. We can get you in for a day, week, month, anything you like. We also have a whole bunch coming up for NFL and for fantasy drafts, which I'm going to be covering later in the show today. This starts off a new segment on the show, in addition to the fantasy stuff that I cover on Thursdays, where I do talk about some training camp updates and things that are going to be important. The other thing you get if you join VIP is you do get custom draft sheets. I actually have a tool that makes most up-to-date rankings, basically all the way up to, I can do it 30 minutes before your draft if you want. And I talked about this before, is that the danger in using just a cheat sheet or for sure a magazine is that information is stale, it's outdated, and it doesn't take into account a whole host of factors. It's basically just statistical projections based on averages. It's the same thing that using a trend sheet does when you're betting. So it doesn't matter what your format is, PPR, not PPR, anything. I can custom make draft boards for you. Last year, in VIP, we had, at least from people that reported, we had over, I think, 35 to 40 playoff appearances from people and almost 15 championships. And I had multiple people who said that with the draft boards that I made, they won every league that they were in. It will give you an advantage you have not seen before, I promise you. So with that in mind, let's talk about the weekend in baseball. So first thing I want to talk about is Chase Burns on Saturday. And you're going to have to hear a little rant by me, is that I'm not going to rant about what happened with the play. I'm not going to rant about what books did with the play. What I am going to talk to you about is that Major League Baseball was absolutely fucking ridiculous for even starting that game. The rain was in the forecast. You could see it. The rain was still coming down when they decided to play and took the tarp off. And had they waited an hour, they could have gotten the game in, because Kevin Roth WX, if you don't follow him, I've said this a million times, you need to follow Kevin Roth WX. So if you don't follow Kevin Roth, you need to. But it was ridiculous because the forecast clearly stated, the radar, you could see it. The rain was going to let up in an hour, but that would have taken us to almost 9 to 9:30 Eastern time. And that would have done two things. Number one is it would have crushed their East Coast primetime audience, which for two teams that are in the Eastern time zone or close to it, that would kill them, because it was a primetime game. It was the Motor Speedway, blah, blah, blah. The other thing it would have done, because Spencer Strider was already scratched, is it would have, Chase Burns wouldn't have pitched. Now, they decided to run it and decided to start the game, and you know the result. The infield was underwater. There was no way that game was going to finish. I mean, the field was unsafe after half an inning. I'm actually surprised that Cincinnati even sent Burns out there. But for those of you that bet on Burns, I'll say a few things. Number one is that the house rules for most books do state that if a pitcher throws one pitch, action is live. It sucks. It really sucks, but it's the rules. Now, that said, is that books who are competing for the same business, what I've seen is I've seen about 50-50. I've seen 50% of books that I've seen, like the major ones, like Bet365, Novig, I know did it. I think Caesars did. There were a few that graded it as they just pushed all bets, all Chase Burns bets, because he wasn't able to complete his start because of what happened. Other ones graded it as a big fat L. And what really sucks is that according to the rules for most books, that's probably how it should be graded. Now, I put on my customer service hat and I think about, if I'm competing for business with other books, is that, do I really want to be a hard ass about that one? And do I really want to take that line just to make a few extra dollars? Because from what I remember, the majority of money in action was on the over, as you would expect. And even in the short time he was out there, Burns obviously was on track to destroy that number. But I personally believe that the right answer was to void all Chase Burns bets, overs, unders, everything. And, what I probably would have done is given the under bettors, who technically would have, cashed, some kind of free play, some kind of something as a make good or match play or something like that. But if your book did grade it as a loss and you haven't yet, it might be worth reaching out to your host or your guy, or especially local books, whoever it is, customer service, whatever you can, just to see if they'll give you some free play. I know people that didn't get anything, and then when they did that, they got like, a half a bet or something like that in free play. It's better than nothing. I I understand both sides of this one. I understand that rules are rules, and you grade it as a loss because of the way the rules are written. But then there's the human element, and there are a few books that did decide to do what I thought was the fair thing to do, which was just avoid all bets, because the game never should have started. And or if they did, they should have waited till like 10 Eastern time, but that would have killed your primetime audience. So anyways, that in mind, we will talk about what is going on, what else went on this weekend. And there were a few other situations that went on. What you're seeing now is you're seeing teams kind of settle into their new teams. You saw some guys pitch for their new teams. I typically don't like taking guys that are in their first start with a new team. You're with a new team, you're with a new catcher, it's a whole new situation. I typically don't like doing that. So we have a few of those today, and I'll give you my general takes on those, but I'm not probably in general going to be that interested in taking guys that are on their new teams. I like seeing at least get them a start under their belt. The only thing that might change that a little bit would be if we have a pitcher and catcher who have worked together before. So if you have like a pitcher and catcher are reunited, or they spend time in another place and they at least have some familiarity, maybe. But overall, it's just not something that interests me a great deal. So that was, the Chase Burns thing was the big thing that I wanted to talk about from the weekend. That was probably the one that I saw the most noise about, and just wanted to give my take, because we were on Chase Burns in VIP. And that was when the weather was supposed to clear up by a reasonable amount of time, and supposed to get the game in and what have you. So, but again, if you were on Burns and you had your bet graded as a loss, I would at least contact the customer service area or your host or somebody, and just ask, hey, weird situation. And even if they're not going to give you your money, just to say, can I have some free play, right? Because obviously you're going to invest it back into the site. So it costs them nothing to do. And, it might turn out to be nothing again, in which case then you can say, okay, well, it is what it is. So anyways, let's get on with the business for today. We have 3 pitchers to talk about, and I have some NFL training camp stuff to get into. Before we do that, just a couple shout outs in the chat. If there's anything you want to say or things you want to be on, please do make some noise in the chat. Eric J, welcome to you. What's up to you as well? Thank you for joining. We got Cover Kings also in the house. Thank you so much, Cover Kings. And he's on Tyler Glass now, over 5.5 strikeouts at -150. Not sure if that's available anymore. I think it's probably at 6.5, but you might be able to find it in some places. And he's also on Jesus Luzardo, over 6.5 at -115. Cover Kings also says, I live in the area. It was raining hard. Yeah, Strider wanted to pitch bad. Yeah, he did. And obviously the Tennessee connection, they wanted Burns to pitch so bad, so bad. And like I said, had the game gone off, even with the late start, had the game gone off and Burns pitched, who knows what would have ended up, which is why I defer to Voiding, because you have no idea what would happen. And just one of those freak occurrences that doesn't happen often. But if there's any shame to give in this situation, the shame is on Major League Baseball, because I get that you want the primetime audience. I get you wanted Burns, Strider, but like Atlanta had already scratched Strider. Like, just push the game back to the next day. If you push the game back to the next day, you get both guys. You almost assuredly get both guys, because both guys can go back, they can unwind, they can warm up the next day. Anyways, Lauderdale Owens, welcome in. Thank you for joining, saying, hope you had a great weekend. Love seeing the Marlins sweep the Yankees. Yeah, the Yankees' new pitchers didn't make a huge difference for them this weekend. Well, they did. They just made the wrong difference. So Yankees are... I mean, they're probably still going to be a playoff team, but man, 4.5 games out of the division now. And I think, I mean, they got to be careful, because you got Boston's making a surge, and you also have Seattle made a bunch of additions too. So we will see what happens. But anyways, we will cover 3 pitchers, and I'll put the charts up. And if you have any questions about anything, please do, like I said, shout it out. So the first pitcher that we do have to talk about today is Mr. Jesus Luzardo. Cover Kings already talked about him. And we have the lefty who is striking guys out at a 27.1% clip and walking guys at an 8.5% clip. And he gets the Orioles today at home. Dream matchup. And you got an over and under that are basically equally as juiced. So what do we do with Jesus Luzardo? Well, given the state that the Orioles are in these days, it's over or nothing. So now let's look and see if we can get to an over. With this lineup that is projected to be 2 lefties and 7 righties, you do see a disparity in the percentage of strikeouts that Luzardo has for lefties versus righties. This has been the case at home, on the road, pretty much anywhere. And so with only 2 lefties, then that means he's going to have to get a bunch of the righties. Now, can he? With Luzardo, the thing that I always look for is chase. And you will see now, I've actually modified these charts in that rather than putting like 1s and 2s for how they match up to the overall, like compared to league average, I actually just have the league average at the bottom and just have their actual swing percentage. So the left number is how often they swing in the zone. The right number, the one next to it is chase, is how often they swing or chase pitches outside of the zone. So what you have with Luzardo is, because he does have a large disparity in his chase versus his zone contact, 82%, which is about league average for zone contact allowed, but 45.7%. And he generates an above average chase rate. So if you're going to chase against this guy, it's going to be tough for you. So we look at this lineup and we see that we only have really one chaser. I mean, O'Neill and Mayo are both over league average, but we only have one chaser, and that is Jackson at the bottom. And I'm not even certain that he's going to be in. That would be if they decide to go analytics and go righty right and go righty lefty versus lefty. But you see a lot of guys down in that 23 to 25% range. So the Orioles are a bad team. I'm not going to make any mistake about it. They've obviously been in free fall. The thing with the Orioles, though, is that they don't chase. But when they do, they don't make contact. So Luzardo is going to need some chase here because, as I've said over and over again, Luzardo's fastball it's okay. It's high. It's like 96. Sometimes you can run up 97, maybe 98, but it's a decent fastball. It's not an overpowering. It's not a Tarek Skubal fastball. It's not a Zach Wheeler fastball. It's not a Jacob Mizorowski fastball, right? Like he's not going to rear back and throw 100 and just blow it by you. In fact, there was even some talk. I don't think it's going to happen, but there was even some talk with some of the acquisitions the Phillies made and with Nola now on the verge of coming back that Luzardo towards the end of the season might be moved into the bullpen. Because when you think about it, when you got Nola, when you got Wheeler, when you got Sanchez, and then when you have Ranger Suarez and Taijuan Walker, something's got to give unless you're going to go 6 days, which as the season progresses, I don't know if they are. I don't know if it's going to happen. I do think that in the playoffs, he'll be coming out of the pen. I don't think he'll be part of the starting rotation in the playoffs unless Nola is still hurt. And even still, I would still think that they would defer to Ranger Suarez because of his experience there. But anyways, for today, what I see here is I see a lot of guys that don't make contact when they chase, 6 guys under league average, but I also see a lot of guys who don't chase. So now what I'm looking for the equalizer is I'm looking for their whiff percentage to a sweeper. And what I see is 3 of them, O'Neill, Mayo, Cowser, all have poor whiff percentages to a sweeper. And all 3 of them, 2 of them have decent chase percentages. So you have 4 guys, I would say, that would be relatively easy for Luzardo to get, even though I can see him getting O'Neill, I can see him getting Cowser, I can see him getting Jackson. Now, so that's 3 strikeouts. I can also definitely see him getting Mayo. So now you have 4. So where do the other 3 come from? If Adley Rutschman is back in the lineup, that one's going to be tough. If Holiday is back in the lineup, it's not the easiest guy to get. And there's just a lot of maybe kind of sortas in here after those 4. So if this is the lineup that they run, I think that the line is set exactly where it should be. Now, the one thing you do have is you do have a Baltimore team traveling in against a Phillies team who just got done with, who's in the middle of a homestand. So that can always lead to a poor performance in the team coming in's first game. So I think I have a slight lean on over if this is the lineup that they run. If Adley isn't in, that goes up exponentially. If Adley and Carlson both aren't in, then I think you probably have to run it. But we'll see what they do. We'll see what the Orioles run here and the order in which they run it. If you want an over, the guys that you want in are you want Cowser in, you want Mayo in, and you want Jackson in. Those are the 3 that you want in if you're going to try to run an over. The guys that you don't want in are you don't want Adley, you probably don't want Holiday, and even though I'm sure he'll be in, but he might bat down in the order because it's lefty, and you don't want Carlson. So right now, I think the line is set exactly where it should be. And I think if you're playing it, you have to play over or nothing just because of the swing and miss potential that you have throughout this lineup with 7 guys under league average in zone contact and 6 guys under league average in chase contact. It's just not wise to take an under on the Orioles of all teams coming in to a team playing on a homestand. So let's see. Cover King saying, a little worried about DeGrom, hoping he doesn't end up back on the IL. Yeah, shorter start yesterday, or he was laboring yesterday. And also, Carking saying Baltimore bottom 5 in zone contact last 7 days. They are. My only concern with that is that Luzardo is the guy that makes guys miss with chase because he doesn't have an overpowering fastball. Some of the pitchers that the Cubs have faced. The Orioles, they faced the Cubs over the last 7 days are a couple of guys at least that make you miss in the zone. Like Matthew Boyd, I know was one of them. They faced Gausman. I want to say that they faced Gausman, but there were a few guys I know that they faced that did make that weren't the greatest at, or that were really good at making guys miss in the, no, they didn't face Gauss, but either way. So yeah, what I would say with this one is, if you're playing this one, you're playing the over. The over. Cover King's also saying, pay attention to FanDuel. Yeah, FanDuel is the sharper book when it comes to pitchers and pitching props, almost always. And Roger, welcome in, Roger. Thanks for joining. Saying just tuned in, crazy debacle with Chase Burns. Yeah, if you go back and watch, Roger, after this is over, I spent the entire opening segment talking about Chase Burns and what I thought should happen and what people should do with him. All right, so that would be my take on Luzardo. Next, we have another lefty. We have Nick Lodolo. The lefty is striking guys out at a 23.6% clip and walking guys at a 4.6% clip. He gets the Cubs today. We have an interesting line for Lodolo going on the road against a low strikeout team. We have a 5.5. I actually thought this one would be at a 4.5. I thought this would be at a 4.5 with medium juice, quite honestly. So immediately the line leads me to think that this is probably over or nothing. And remember, this math that I run, this is what the pure math says. So this is before I see any lines. I purposely create these before I look at any lines because I don't want to be biased. I don't want to be looking at a line and try to make the math match. I do the math first, then I look and compare the two, because just try to incorporate all the numbers that could be factored in to what makes a line for a prop. So when the two don't match, it raises my eyebrows a little bit. And this is one that does, because Nick Lodolo, as you see, does not have great past history against most Cubs hitters. He's gotten a few, and we'll talk about that in a second. But 21 strikeouts and 98 plate appearances, a 21.4% K rate, and he's going on the road. And he's going to a place or against an opponent that he's reasonably familiar with. And so that's where the rise in line from what I thought it should be, which I thought we were going to get a 4.5 at like -135, -140 for an over. That's why the rise to 5.5 for a road pitcher makes me think about this one. Now, when a guy gets bumped like that to the line above and then they juice the under for a home pitcher, it doesn't necessarily raise as many eyebrows just because of home road disparities. What I see with Lodolo too is this is a guy who has had 3 starts at Wrigley Field, and he only has an 18% strikeout percentage in those 3 starts, and has actually had a few starts where it hasn't really gone that well for him, to be honest. So, I mean, in 3 starts, he's given up 14 hits. So you have a guy that hasn't pitched the best, and yeah, so not the greatest. And so breaking down Lodolo, what Nick Lodolo has here is he does have a decent contact percentage allowed in both zone and chase. But with Nick Lodolo, I always do look for chase as well, because he throws that nasty curveball. And because if you're going to whiff, if you're going to chase a curveball, then chances are pretty good that you're going to strike out. Case in point, Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson has a horrible whiff percentage to a curveball. He also has horrible chase contact, and you can see the results against Lodolo. 7 strikeouts and 14 plate appearances. So we do have, for this Cubs team, we do have 3 guys, now more like 2.5. We only have 3 guys that chase. We have Nico, who has not struck out against Lodolo ever, and I don't expect to tonight. I gave him a rare 0 because of what the metrics say. PCA, who I'm sure will strike out, and Shaw at the bottom, who is probably a 50-50 because he chases above league average, but he also makes contact when he does. So the ones that I think that Lodolo can get for sure are PCA and Dansby because of the past history and multiple metrics, but also Suzuki. If you haven't been paying attention to Seiya Suzuki, it's been rough for the man. He had a period right after the trade deadline or right after the break where it was really rough, and it hasn't really gotten a whole lot better. So, to his credit, he's only struck out twice in his last 3 games. But before that, in his previous 5 games, 12 strikeouts in 5 games. So you have 14 strikeouts in 8 games for Suzuki. I have to put him down for one because of that, even though his past history against Lodolo is not indicative of somebody that would strike out. But I have to pay attention to how the guy is playing as of late as well. So you add all that up, and with the chase contact in here, because Suzuki does have poor chase contact as well, I come up with 5. I come up with 5 for sure. But the books are telling me that 6 is a very, very distinct possibility. We're getting an even money prop at 6. And like I said, they don't usually do this for guys who are on the road. You normally see guys on the road get the lower number and versus a higher number. So I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get in on Lodolo. I think if this is the lineup that they're going to run, especially if Nico and Turner are both in, which I would expect that they would be because they're both righties and both regular starters, is that I don't think I can get in here. And if I'm doing anything, I might take it down to 5+ and parlay it or put it with something else, just because the under is just scary here because of how this one is lined. Now, if for some reason, if Suzuki is out or is moved down in the lineup, if for some reason Dansby Swanson is out, Crow Armstrong played the last time they faced Lodolo, so I would expect him to be in. But really, PCA, Suzuki, and Swanson are the 3. If you want an under, those are the 3 you don't want. But I would expect all 3 to be in. My question is, at what point does Suzuki get moved down the lineup? Because it's not working. Just to put it lightly, to put it gently. And so we'll see what the Cubs lineup looks like. But if we get exactly as projected, I would probably want to do, the only thing I'd want to do with this one is take it to 5 and then pair it with something else. So we have a couple more comments in the chat. I got Mom Who Bets, happy Monday and good morning to you as well. Thank you for joining. Uncle Stoner, thank you for joining. Top of the morning to you. Also saying numbers don't lie, only the players do. Yeah, ain't that the truth? 910J, thank you for joining, and thank you for reposting the stream. And Berg saying, I thought you were going to talk about what happened at MetLife over the weekend. Yeah, for those of you that didn't watch SummerSlam over the weekend, if you're a WWE fan, I thought that they put on quite a good show. And the 2 main events had craziness and insanity and surprises, including for those of you that didn't watch it, if you're a fan, a guy that I did not expect to come back because of issues surrounding him at the moment, Brock Lesnar, because I mean he's not named, but that's who it is in the Vince McMahon lawsuit, and he's back. And basically after the show, I mean, Triple H confirmed it that John Cena basically had a list of guys that he wanted to face one last time on his retirement tour, and Lesnar was one of them. So they rolled the dice with it, and for that's something that I would have expected Vince to do, but I didn't think that TKO would do it because of how hypersensitive they are to public sentiment. But Brock Lesnar is apparently going to face John Cena. I don't know if they're going to do a 1-match program or a 10-match or 3-match program or whatever it is, but we only got 4 months left to Cena. So you don't have a whole lot of time left. And so Cena apparently was one of the ones that he requested was Brock Lesnar. So they are going to make it happen. Yeah. Kid Keon saying Brock is back. Yeah. I was shocked. And just because, like I said, he's not named in the Vince McMahon lawsuit, but there was allegations made against a former UFC champion working for WWE at the time. And at the time, WWE only had one former UFC heavyweight champion, and that was Brock Lesnar. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, let's go back to the business at hand. We got the last pitcher today, and that's Tyler Glasnow. So the righty is striking guys out at a 29.7% clip, walking guys at 12.7%, which is abnormal for him. He gets the Cardinals tonight, and the line is pretty much exactly what I expected it to be. I know Cover King said that was a minus 150 hanging earlier. I think he probably might have bet it at over or at open. But so we got a 5.5 or 6.5 at plus money. And lo and behold, that's how the math works out. Tyler Glasnow. The main thing with Glasnow here is that he lives in the zone, 53.1%. He also actually, and this is true home, road, or anywhere, obliterates righties. You see the disparity at home, but it's just as striking on the road as well. So it's about overall, he's got about almost a 20% difference in strikeout percentage for lefties versus righties. So you have a Cardinals team that's projected to run 5 lefties. Now, one of those is Donovan, and Donovan was a late scratch yesterday in San Diego for personal reasons. Wasn't any more information given. Don't know if he'll be back tonight. So we'll see what happens with that one. I'm sure we'll get some update. We probably will get some updates throughout the day. Then for the remaining lefties, you have Burleson, Nootbaar, Gorman, Scott. And even though Glasnow has had some issues striking out lefties, I still had to put Gorman and Scott down for one of them because of their very, very poor zone contact. If you miss in the zone, Tyler Glasnow is going to get you. Especially with his slider, which he does run in the zone. His curveball can run in the zone as well. So I had to put Gorman and Scott both down for one. I also had to put Nootbaar down for one. Now, even as a lefty, and here's why. Even with his contact, here's why. Is that you look at zone swing percentage, and Nootbaar takes a lot of pitches. He swings 10% under league average in the zone. And if you look at the bottom right of the chart, you can see what Tyler Glasnow's strikeout percentage is when he gets ahead of hitters. So you have a pitcher that throws in the zone, a pitcher that goes after strike one aggressively, a pitcher that strikes guys out near 50%. And when he gets 0-2, I think it's over 50%. So if you have a hitter that puts himself in that position and a hitter that whiffs at 40% to a slider, I got to put him down for one. I can't put him down for anything more. I can't put him for a 1+. But so even though as a lefty, I have to put him down for one. Now we go to the righties, which again, he just Glasnow torches. And when you have a guy that torches righties at this rate, I can't put anybody at a 0.25. They all have to be 50-50 at worst, or at best, I should say, for them. So like, for example, Burleson, great zone contact, swings a lot in the zone, but because of that, I have to put him down for a 50-50. So you go add all that up, and it adds up to 6. And I know Cover Kings was saying over 5.5, and I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to get there at the over 6.5. I like over 5.5. I'm not sure I like the over 6.5. What I would like over 6.5, what would cause me to like that is if Donovan was out again, and I mean, if Donovan's out, or if they run 3 or maybe 4 lefties, that would make me a lot more interested in the 5 or in the 6.5 versus the 5.5. So I think if you want, you can take Lodolo to 5, you can take Glasnow to 6, and you can parlay them together. You can get a decent plus money there. You can even do all 3 of these guys. You can do Glasnow and Luzardo at 6 and Lodolo at 5 for some lunch money. You could do something like that. To me, all 3 of these lines are probably set exactly where they should be based on what the projected lineup is. Now, again, you take Donovan out, and especially if you put another righty in, like if you put like Walker in or somebody like that, now I'm interested in the 6.5, especially if you're going to have somebody like Nootbaar lead off, or if you're going to bet Gorman higher because of that. Now I'm a lot more interested in the 6.5. So I want to see what's going to happen with Donovan. Want to see if he's going to be back. The other thing you have to consider here, if you were even thinking about taking a shot on the under, which I wouldn't, is that you also have a Cardinals team who is going back-to-back West Coast road trips. That's always tough. Back-to-back, they left San Diego yesterday, and yeah, they just traveled in state, but still, it's a back-to-back road trip far away from home that can mess with teams. So I think it's over or nothing. And that's what I would want if I was going on Glass now. And so that. All right. We have a couple of questions here from the chat, a couple of questions and comments. Roger's asking thoughts on Lauer versus the Rockies. I mean, it's over or nothing. It's over or nothing. And as of right now, I don't see a lot of value in the line itself. I think that it's set exactly at average, which is where it should be. And when I look at the other metrics involved, he doesn't have the greatest history against one guy in the lineup, actually against two guys, because against Estrada and Farmer, both of who are projected to be in, because Lauer's a lefty, is that he's only got 4 strikeouts and 32 plate appearances against those two. So if those two are in, that makes it makes it harder. But I think it's over or nothing. It's always the case with the Rockies. Kid Keon asking thoughts about Yusei, Fried, Manea. All right, we'll take those one by one. Kikuchi, there have been so many spots where he's been projected to smack, and his line's been bumped up, and he hasn't done a thing. And so when he's been bumped up to 6.5, now he's bumped down against a Rays team traveling in. And so that might lead me to the under, but you also have a Rays team that's flying across the country. And so, I mean, that's the one that's what makes it tough for me. I'm probably just out on Kikuchi, but I think if you're looking, I think that the under would be the way to go. He's just, man, he has been so wild lately and has had to play catch up on strikeouts all start long. And you can't do that against the Rays because of how patient that they are. So it would be under or nothing for me. Max Fried, I thought, was set pretty correctly. The only thing that was tough for me is a team on a back-to-back road trip flying in and taking a heavily juiced over. That one doesn't necessarily interest me a ton, even though you do have some decent past history. Like he's gotten Seager 6 out of 18 times. He's gotten a few other guys a handful of times, but without a lot of past history here. And I'm probably just going to be off of Fried just because I don't really want to pay that heavy of juice on a road pitcher who's projected to pitch 6 innings and whose hits and earned runs are both, they hover between 4.5 and 5.5, and they're both down. So it would indicate a good start. But like I said, it's hard for me for a team just traveling in like that and for a guy like Fried to pay minus 150 for a road pitcher. If I'm paying minus 150 something for a road pitcher, I either see something in the line, which I don't for this. Like, I'll give you an example. Over the weekend or on Friday, we played Jack Leiter in VIP, and it was minus 145. Jack Leiter over 4.5. I saw something in the line. We had a couple of the sharper books that were hanging a higher line, the line movement. There were a whole bunch of line factors that said play Jack Leiter, so I was more comfortable with that. Under normal circumstances, I would not play Jack Leiter, for example, at that price on the road. Same thing goes with Max Fried in this situation, just because he's just not the kind of, like, a guy that I would and would factor the line stuff in less would be a guy like Wheeler, would be a guy like Skubal. I mean, some of those guys that are almost line proof. So that's my logic behind that. And Manea, I think, is over nothing as well. You do have the Mets who are at home. And the other thing I like about Manea is that he actually has some decent history against Santana and Ramirez, who are usually the two dead spots in the lineup. He's got 9 strikeouts and 36 plate appearances, which you might think, okay, well, that's not that many, but it's still a 25% strikeout percentage. Most pitchers are like, I mean, both of them are like 18, 19% when it comes to strikeouts. So he's ahead of the curve on that one. And as we've talked about here and I've talked about here and elsewhere, a lot of that lineup is just like there's a lot of strikeout potential after you get past the big three being Kwan, Santana, and Ramirez. So I think if you're looking, you are looking at the over. All right, Cover King saying, yeah, gave out Glass now at yep, Glass now would I think it opened at a few places at 5.5 and then quickly got bumped up to 6.5. And then Cover King saying, yeah, Kikuchi, he gives me nightmares too. He's not quite on my no bet list yet, but I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. All right, let's talk about other looks, sides, totals, etc. today before I talk about some NFL training camp stuff that I think would be of interest. So a couple money lines that I think that have value, some plus money lines. I think that the Rays have value at plus money here. I think that the Diamondbacks have value at home in Sears' first start. Both that's at plus 108 and plus 110 respectively. And I think that would do it. The only other one that kind of sort of has value, and I'm not that interested. I mean, I'm not super interested in it, but the Reds at plus 123, I think has a little bit of value. But the two that I would like the most from a money line perspective would be the Rays and the Padres, both of those at plus money. From a totals perspective, I think that Mets and Guardians under 8 has some value. And I think the only other one was Blue Jays Rockies over 11.5. I think that the Blue Jays bats are can work very well out in Coors, and you also have an option for the Blue Jays team total. So I think any of that could potentially work. All right, let's talk about some training camp stuff. Let's talk about some training camp things. So these are things that just are things that I noticed that I think could have the potential for early season, whether it becomes to player value, when it comes to your fantasy draft. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about were some of the hold out or hold in situations that you're dealing with that could impact a guy's fantasy value. And the first one of that is James Cook. So James Cook wanted a new contract, came to camp, said he wanted to be with his team, but now yesterday, all of a sudden, just was standing on the sidelines. And when he was asked why, his answer was business. And so there's two things in play here with James Cook. Number one is he's been pining the coaching staff hard for more third down and more passing game work. The problem is that the Bills don't see him as a running back one. And they also don't want a guy to be a true bell cow back. And so you have both of those factors in, and they also want Ray Davis a lot. So you have a lot work. Cook has a lot working against him for this. They've already basically told him, no, that's not going to work. And so I think the thought process behind it was that if he could be a 3-down back, then that would make him earn a new contract. But the Bills said no. And they're not showing any interest in getting him a new deal. So he's going to have to come down on his demands. He wants to be paid like a true running back one. And I got to be honest, I don't see James Cook as a running back one either. I see him as a very viable starting running back. But when you think about running, you think about Saquon type money, you think about Christian McCaffrey type usage. That's just not James Cook to me. And so I know he thinks he is, and I appreciate that. But like I said, just not the guy that I think would warrant something like that or a contract like that. The other guy that I wanted to talk about is Terry McLaurin, who is also holding in and has requested a trade. So Terry McLaurin had this. If you've been in VIP, I've been talking about this all summer. McLaurin wants a new contract, but he also wants a contract in the 30 million a year type range, and that just ain't gonna happen. That is just not going to happen at all. The reason being is because the Commanders see that guys that are paid in that $30 million range, you're talking about Justin Jefferson, you're talking about guys like that. And like he wants to be like the sixth or seventh highest paid wide receiver in the league. And the big issue with that is that the guys that are all on that payday list are guys that are 4 to 5 years younger than he is. So you sign him to that big of an extension, you're paying him that money till he's like 35. And that's where the Commander's hesitation is. Now, would he accept a bigger money, like bigger upfront money, shorter term deal remains to be seen. But the fact that he officially has requested a trade and has not participated in training camp means that the situation has already come to a head and neither side is budging. Will they trade him? We'll have to see, but he's losing a lot of reps right now with a guy who has an unlimited fantasy ceiling in Jaden Daniels. Deebo Samuel has looked really good in camp, who's actually kind of become a sleeper of mine. And so Terry McLaurin has just moved down my list. Even if they do come to some kind of an agreement, I don't see how his future. There's probably very few paths where his future in football is in Washington. You could have a situation where, like, he decides to just bank on himself and plays this year, and then goes somewhere else. But right now, what it looks like is that it's a staring contest. And so don't be surprised if McLaurin gets off to a slow start, because he does have a second-year quarterback who's also, they're trying to factor in new weapons, and he is just not participating at all in camp. So the other guy, so then a couple other situations to talk about with in camp. A guy that has just completely fallen off my radar now because he just underwent surgery, as I say, likely. A lot of people were kind of favoring him over Mark Andrews potentially because of his athleticism. It's probably going to be like October before he's going to be back on the field. He broke a bone in his foot, and even if he comes back, we'll have some rehab and kind of a restart, et cetera, to go through. So Isaiah Likely has gone from like a tight end 2, or maybe a guy that I would pair with like a floor veteran to maybe take advantage of if he starts popping, to get him in the lineup. I'm just not interested in him at all. I would pass on him entirely. Another injury situation that I've been paying attention to is Matt Stafford. Stafford was supposed to be back last week. He was supposed to be back the week before, but he's on the sidelines with back soreness. And whenever a guy with this many miles on the tires is out for this long in camp, it doesn't concern me that he can step back in and do stuff, but it leads me to be worried about what's going to happen when the speed goes up and the hits get bigger, and et cetera. So Stafford is a guy who I've lowered my expectations for. He's probably a guy who, if I'm going to roster him at quarterback, it's probably going to be hard, because if I'm rostering Stafford, he doesn't have a super high ceiling, but he's a floor guy. So I'd want to pair him with a high ceiling, higher risk guy like a Bryce Young, or like somebody like that. The problem becomes if he's not going to be a floor guy because of his injury, then he really has no interest to me. So Matt Stafford's pretty much off my radar right now. Unless he can make it back and we show something in camp and we get good reports on the back, I'm not interested in Matthew Stafford at all. A guy that I am becoming a lot more interested in here is a guy for the Colts. And this is the guy who I think you need to handcuff to Jonathan Taylor if you take him, especially because the Colts specifically drafted him wanting to limit Taylor's workload throughout the year so that he's fresh for the whole season. DJ Giddens. So DJ Giddens has really impressed in the passing game. And if Anthony Richardson is under center at the start, which I'm assuming he will be at this point, what I would think is that Giddens would be in on a lot of the passing downs and would be a guy who can even line up and split out wide, go in the slot. He's got a lot of burst, a lot of juice. He's not a guy I would just take and expect to have like any value on his own. But if you get Jonathan Taylor, I would look to potentially spend one of my last picks, or if you have Jonathan Taylor, I would look to potentially spend one of my last picks on DJ Giddens. So kid's got a lot of juice. And so Cover King saying James Cook is tweaking if he thinks he deserves it. Yeah, I don't think he wants like that much, but he wants to be paid like a true blue bell cow RB1, and he's not that. So also thank you, TJ. Thank you for reposting the stream. Appreciate it. So anyways, those are some of the big stories that I've kind of seen throughout training camp. I mean, there's a few more like minor injuries, things going on, but nothing super big here. I will still be back on Thursday. We'll be back with another installment of You'll Probably Thank Me Later. I've already had two guys that I thought were going to be extremely overvalued that I think will underperform. One was Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then the other one was Joe Mixon. So I got a third one in that. Lots more training camp news, lots more training camp stuff to go through. So want to give one more run through the chat to say thank you to everybody. Shout out to Eric. Shout out to Cover Kings, Lauderdale Owens, Roger, Mom Who Bets, Berg, Uncle Stoner, 910J, Kid Keon, and TJ. Thank you all. Reminder, this show has been brought to you on behalf of the Daily Bread Network on YouTube. Please do subscribe if you like what you hear. It helps us and gets you access to all of our regular content. Also, please do repost the stream, share, smash the like button if you like what you hear. I'm Spin Doc. Thank you so much for joining. Best of luck in all your action today. Back tomorrow with more. See you then.